My name is Julia Wright, and I was about to lose everything I'd built in 3 years of clawing my way through the podcasting world. The warehouse space I'd converted into my network headquarters felt cavernous that morning, empty desks reminding me of all the talent I couldn't afford to keep. Maya, my business partner, paced behind me as I stared at our dwindling bank statements. We need a miracle, Julia. Or at least 10 new premium sponsors. The third network launch was supposed to be our golden ticket. Instead, it was bleeding money faster than my first heartbreak. I'm 32, brunette with eyes the color of fresh basil, and I've never backed down from a fight. But damn, this one was testing every ounce of stubborn Irish blood in my veins. Maybe we need to step back, get some perspective. Maya raised an eyebrow. You want to take a vacation? Now? Not a vacation. Something real. Something that doesn't involve screens or algorithms or pretending to be someone I'm not. That's when I saw the flyer taped to the community board outside our favorite coffee shop. Boise Community Garden, new member orientation. Spring was just hitting Idaho, and suddenly I needed dirt under my fingernails more than I needed another failed pitch meeting. Meanwhile, across town, Autumn Barnes was having her own kind of meltdown. The wellness influencer who'd built a lifestyle empire on morning smoothies and positive affirmations had just watched it all crumble. Fake endorsement scandals tend to do that to a girl's reputation. 28 years old, blonde hair that caught sunlight like spun gold, and blue eyes that had sold 1 million wellness retreats. Now those same eyes were red from crying in her overpriced Boise Hills apartment. Her manager Derek was relentless. You need to disappear for a while. Let this blow over. Maybe take up yoga teaching or something equally innocent. I need something real, Derek, not another performance. The community garden flyer had been stuffed under her door by a well-meaning neighbor. Autumn stared at it like it was a life raft, growing things, creating something authentic, maybe even finding herself again. The orientation meeting was held in a converted barn that smelled like fresh soil and hope. I arrived early, claiming a seat in the back row, where I could observe without being observed. The facilitator, a weathered woman named Susan, explained plot assignments and seasonal planting schedules. Everything sounded wonderfully complicated and completely different from my digital world. That's when she walked in. Autumn Barnes moved like she owned every room she entered, even one filled with amateur gardeners and hand tools. I recognized her immediately. Who didn't know the face that had sold 10,000 morning routine guides? But something was different, vulnerable. Her usual camera-ready confidence had been replaced by something more genuine. She took the only remaining seat, directly across from me. Our eyes met during Susan's lecture about soil pH levels, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not the manufactured attraction of dating apps or networking events, something deeper, more dangerous. Questions? Susan asked. Autumn raised her hand. What if you've never grown anything before? What if you're starting completely over? Her voice carried weight beyond gardening. I found myself leaning forward, wanting to hear every word. Everyone starts somewhere, honey. The soil doesn't care about your past mistakes. After the meeting, we ended up walking out together. The parking lot conversation lasted longer than the orientation itself. She was running from scandal. I was running from failure. Neither of us admitted it that night, but we were both running towards something we couldn't name yet. Same time next week? Autumn asked, keys jingling in her perfectly manicured hands. Wouldn't miss it. As I drove home through Boise's quiet streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that signing up for that garden was going to change everything. I just didn't know how much. The hardware store smelled like sawdust and possibility. I'd spent the week researching everything about vegetable gardening, filling notebook pages with planting schedules and companion crop theories. Armed with my carefully prepared shopping list, I headed straight for the seed display. That's when I saw her. Autumn Barnes stood in front of the heirloom tomato section, holding the last packet of Cherokee purples like it contained the secrets of the universe. The same packet I'd driven across town to buy. Excuse me, but I think you have my tomatoes. She turned, those blue eyes sparkling with something between amusement and challenge. Your tomatoes? I don't see your name on them. I called ahead, asked them to hold a packet of Cherokee purples. Funny. So did I. We stared at each other across the narrow aisle, neither willing to back down. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore paint-stained jeans that somehow looked more expensive than my entire wardrobe. Even without makeup, she was stunning. annoyingly stunning. Rock, paper, scissors? She suggested. Best 2 out of 3. She won. I pretended not to notice how her face lit up when she claimed victory. Don't look so defeated, she said, already walking toward the checkout. I know where we can share. An hour later, we stood in front of plot number 17 at the community garden. The 12 by 12 square of earth looked impossibly small and dauntingly large at the same time. Susan had assigned us as plot partners after determining we were the only 2 beginners willing to split the seasonal fee. So, Autumn said, surveying our domain, what do you actually know about gardening? I've killed 3 houseplants this year. You? I once made a smoothie with store-bought kale. Does that count? We looked at each other and burst out laughing. The sound echoed across the garden, drawing amused glances from more experienced gardeners. I couldn't remember the last time I'd laughed like that about anything. We're going to need help, I admitted. Lots of help. Susan appeared as if summoned, carrying a well-worn gardening book and a knowing smile. First rule of gardening, the plants want to grow. Your job is not to kill them with kindness. She walked us through the basics. Soil preparation, spacing, watering schedules. Everything I'd researched online suddenly seemed infinitely more complicated in practice. Autumn took notes in a leather journal that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. Start with the tomatoes, Susan advised. They're forgiving, and you've already fought over them. We spent the next hour preparing our plot, working side by side in companionable silence. Every so often, our hands would brush as we reached for the same tool, sending small electric shocks up my arm. I told myself it was static electricity from the dry spring air. You know, Autumn said as we planted the Cherokee purple seedlings, I never asked what kind of podcasts you make. The kinds that keep me up at night wondering if anyone's listening. What kinds are those? I paused, trowel halfway to the soil. Stories about people who don't fit into neat categories. Conversations that make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself. She nodded slowly. Sounds dangerous. The best conversations usually are. The afternoon flew by in a blur of dirt, laughter, and shared discoveries. We learned that Autumn had never owned a pair of work gloves, that I knew more curse words than most construction workers, and that neither of us had any business attempting to grow food for human consumption. Same time next week? She asked as we cleaned up our tools. Assuming we haven't killed everything by then. She grinned, and I felt something warm unfurl in my chest. I have faith in us. As I drove home, hands still dirty despite vigorous scrubbing, I caught myself smiling at nothing. Maya would have a field day if she knew I was spending my Saturdays playing in the dirt with Boise's most controversial influencer. But for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or subscriber numbers. I was thinking about blue eyes and dirty hands and the way Autumn said my name like it meant something. The Cherokee purples were thriving. 3 weeks of Saturday mornings had transformed our amateur plot into something resembling an actual garden. More importantly, those mornings had transformed whatever was happening between Autumn and me into something I couldn't quite name but didn't want to stop. Coffee had become our post-gardening ritual. The little cafe on Garden Street made decent lattes and minded their own business, which was exactly what we needed as we sat across from each other, dirt still embedded under our fingernails despite scrubbing. I've been thinking about what you said, Autumn said, stirring her oat milk latte with more attention than it deserved, about stories that don't fit neat categories. Yeah? I think I've been living in a very neat category for a very long time. Her blue eyes met mine across the small table. There was something vulnerable in her expression, something that made my chest tighten. Categories can be comfortable. Safe? Safe is overrated. I laughed, surprised by her directness. Says the woman who built an empire on morning routines and positive affirmations. Says the woman who lost that empire by pretending to be someone she wasn't. The conversation hung between us, weighted with possibility. I wanted to reach across the table and touch her hand, but Maya's warnings echoed in my head. Getting involved with someone so publicly controversial could destroy everything I'd worked for. Instead, I did something arguably more dangerous. Want to be on my podcast? Autumn's eyebrows shot up. You want to interview me? After everything that's happened? I want to have a conversation with you. About starting over, about growing things, about being brave enough to plant seeds when you don't know if they'll survive. She was quiet for a long moment, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. When? Tomorrow night. My studio. Just you, me, and a microphone. What if I say something wrong? Then you'll sound human. Novel concept for both of us. The next evening, Autumn showed up to my warehouse studio wearing jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes look like summer sky. No makeup, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nothing like the polished influencer who'd sold millions of dollars worth of wellness products. She looked real. I'm nervous, she admitted as I adjusted her microphone. Good. Nervous people tell the truth. The conversation flowed like we'd been doing this for years. She talked about the pressure to be perfect, the exhaustion of performing happiness, the relief of finally admitting she didn't have all the answers. I shared my own struggles with imposter syndrome, the loneliness of building something from nothing, the fear that maybe I wasn't cut out for this after all. What's the scariest thing you've ever done? I asked. Showing up to that garden meeting, starting over with dirty hands and no idea what I was doing. What's the scariest thing you want to do? She looked directly at me, and I forgot we were recording. Be honest about who I am, all of who I am. The episode went live 3 days later. My inbox exploded with messages from listeners who'd never heard Autumn sound so genuine, so human. Comments poured in about authenticity, courage, the beauty of imperfection. It was the most downloaded episode in my network's history. But what mattered more was the text Autumn sent that night. Thank you for seeing me. Saturday morning gardening took on new energy. We worked closer together, conversations deeper, silences more comfortable. The other gardeners had started calling us the Tomato Girls, and we'd stopped correcting them. Hand me that watering can, Autumn said, brushing soil from her knees. I reached for it at the same moment she did, our fingers tangling around the handle. Neither of us let go immediately. The spring morning was perfect, warm sun filtering through the trees around the garden's perimeter. She was close enough that I could smell her shampoo, something light and floral that made me dizzy. Julia, she said softly. Yeah? I think I'm in trouble. What kind of trouble? The kind where I can't stop thinking about someone who's supposed to be just a friend. My heart hammered against my ribs. That does sound like trouble. The worst kind. We were still holding the watering can, still standing close enough to feel each other's breath. I watched her gaze drop to my lips, watched her lean slightly forward. The world narrowed to this moment, this choice, this possibility. Autumn, I whispered. She closed the distance between us, her lips soft and warm against mine. The kiss was gentle, tentative, like she was asking a question. I answered by deepening it, one hand finding the curve of her neck, the other still gripping that damn watering can. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, she smiled that real smile I'd grown to love. Now we're really in trouble, she said. The very best kind. Maya cornered me the Monday after the kiss. She stood in my office doorway, arms crossed, wearing the expression that meant business. We need to talk. I didn't look up from my computer screen. Good morning to you too. The Autumn Barnes episode has been downloaded 200,000 times in 4 days. I know. It's incredible. It's dangerous. Maya stepped inside and closed the door. Julia, you're playing with fire here. She's radioactive right now. The wellness scandal is still fresh in people's minds. I finally looked up, meeting her concerned gaze. Maya had been my business partner since day one, the practical voice to my creative chaos. Her dark hair was pulled back in its usual severe bun, but worry softened her features. She's not radioactive, she's human. Human doesn't sell premium ad spots. 3 major sponsors have already expressed concerns about the association. What kind of concerns? Maya sat down across from my desk, her voice gentle but firm. The kind that could tank everything we've built. Julia, I know you like her. It's obvious to anyone with eyes. But mixing business with whatever this is could destroy us. My chest tightened. Since when do we let sponsors dictate our content? Since we started bleeding money and needed every dollar to keep the lights on. The conversation haunted me all week. Every time I thought about Autumn's lips against mine, Maya's warnings echoed louder. But when Saturday morning arrived, I found myself at the garden anyway, heart racing as I spotted Autumn's blonde hair among the vegetables. She looked up when I approached our plot, and her smile could have powered the whole city. Hey, stranger. Hey, yourself. We worked in comfortable rhythm, but I could feel the weight of unspoken words between us. Finally, as we were packing up our tools, Autumn broke the silence. You've been quiet today. Just thinking. About us? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Having regrets? Her tone was light, but I caught the underlying vulnerability. No regrets, just complications. That afternoon, while Autumn dealt with her own complications, I learned exactly how messy things could get. Derek, her manager, had called an emergency meeting at his downtown office. The sleek glass building felt cold compared to our warm garden mornings. Autumn, sweetheart, we have a problem. Derek's voice carried the fake warmth of someone delivering bad news. He was tall, silver-haired, and wore suits that cost more than most people's rent. The podcast thing was cute, but now there are rumors. Autumn sat across from his massive desk, spine straight, hands folded. What kind of rumors? The kind that suggest you're not as interested in finding Mr. Right as your brand requires. My brand? Your comeback depends on relatability. Traditional values, family-friendly content. Derek leaned forward, his smile sharp. Suburban moms don't buy wellness products from women who make unconventional lifestyle choices. Unconventional lifestyle choices? Autumn's voice had gone dangerously quiet. You know what I mean. The garden thing is fine, wholesome. But this podcast woman, this Julia Wright, she's not exactly mainstream, is she? Her content is edgy, progressive, not our demographic. Julia is brilliant. Julia is a liability. Derek pulled out his phone, showing her a gossip blog. Someone photographed you two at that coffee shop. Very cozy, very intimate. Is there something I should know about? Autumn stared at the photo. It showed us leaning across the table toward each other, her hand almost touching mine, both of us laughing. To anyone paying attention, we looked exactly like what we were becoming, two women falling for each other. There's nothing to know, she said finally. Good. Because I've got 3 major brand deals on the table. Clean beauty, athleisure, meal planning apps, conservative companies with traditional values. They're willing to overlook the endorsement scandal, but only if you maintain the right image. And what if I don't want to maintain an image? Derek's smile disappeared. Then you'll be maintaining unemployment. This is your shot at redemption, Autumn. Don't throw it away for some confused phase. That evening, I got a text from Autumn. Can we talk? She showed up at my warehouse an hour later, looking exhausted. Her usual composure had cracked, showing the strain underneath. Derek knows about us, she said without preamble. What does he know? Enough. And he's threatening to drop me if I don't distance myself from you. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. What did you tell him? Nothing, yet. She paced across my office, running hands through her hair. Julia, I have a chance to rebuild everything I lost. Clean slate, new brand deals, financial security. But none of it matters if I have to pretend to be someone I'm not again. We stood facing each other across the room that had housed so many of my dreams. The same room where we'd recorded that breakthrough episode, where I'd first seen her without the masks she wore for the world. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to choose you. Choose this. Choose being honest about who I am. And if it costs you everything? It already cost me everything once. Maybe this time I'll gain something worth having. She crossed the room then, taking my hands in hers. But I need to know this is real for you too. That you're not just experimenting or curious or whatever. I looked into those blue eyes, saw the fear and hope and courage there. Autumn, I haven't been this terrified of losing someone since I was 12 years old. That real enough for you? She kissed me then, deeper than that first kiss in the garden. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, she pressed her forehead against mine. So what do we do now? Now we figure out how to be brave together. But even as I said it, I wondered if bravery would be enough against the forces trying to tear us apart. The board meeting was going to hell in a handbasket. 3 investors sat across from me in the conference room, their faces ranging from concerned to downright hostile. Maya had warned me this was coming, but I'd hoped we'd have more time to prepare. Julia, we need to discuss the direction of your network, said Harrison Wells, the lead investor. His silver hair was slicked back, and his expensive suit screamed old money. Recent content choices have raised questions about brand alignment. Which content choices specifically? The Autumn Barnes episode. the commentary about unconventional relationships, the shift toward more progressive themes. I felt my jaw clench. You mean the most successful episode in our network's history? Success doesn't always translate to sustainable revenue, chimed in Margaret Chen, the venture capitalist who'd initially championed my company. Our market research shows significant advertiser concern. That's when I saw her. Luna sat in the empty chair at the far end of the conference table, looking exactly as she had when I was 8 years old. Dark curls, mischievous green eyes, wearing a sundress that seemed to shimmer in the fluorescent lighting. She smiled and waved as if we'd just seen each other yesterday instead of 24 years ago. I blinked hard, certain I was hallucinating from stress. She was still there. Are you listening, Julia? Harrison's voice snapped me back to reality. Sorry, I thought I saw someone I knew. The investors exchanged glances. Margaret leaned forward. We're prepared to continue funding, but we need assurance that future content will align with broader market appeal. Luna rolled her eyes dramatically and mouthed, boring at me. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Define broader market appeal, I said. Less controversial guests, more mainstream topics, content that doesn't alienate traditional advertisers. In other words, stay in your lane, Luna said, though of course only I could hear her. Tell them where they can stick their lane. The meeting dragged on for another hour. Luna provided running commentary, making faces at the investors and occasionally pantomiming their pompous gestures. By the time they left, I was questioning my sanity but oddly relieved to have her there. Well, Luna said as the door closed behind them, that was thoroughly uninspiring. You're not real, I said to the empty room. Real is relative. I'm real enough. I stared at my childhood imaginary friend, the one who'd helped me through my parents' divorce, who'd listened to my dreams of becoming a storyteller, who'd disappeared when I turned 12 and decided I was too old for make-believe. Why now? Because you're about to make the same mistake you made back then. You're going to choose what's safe over what's true. Before I could respond, she was gone. Just vanished like smoke, leaving me alone with the scent of summer rain and the echo of her laughter. That evening, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see Luna perched on my desk or curled up in my reading chair. The rational part of my brain insisted this was a stress response, maybe a minor breakdown from the pressure of keeping my company afloat while navigating whatever was happening with Autumn. The deeper part of me wondered if Luna was right about the choice I was facing. My phone buzzed with a text from Autumn. How was your day? Weird. Yours? Derek's being impossible. Can I come over? 20 minutes later, Autumn sat on my couch, legs tucked under her, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. She'd been crying, I could tell, despite her attempts to hide it. He's demanding I date someone, she said without preamble. For appearances. Some finance guy he knows who's looking to raise his profile. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. She looked up at me, blue eyes bright with unshed tears. But I can't stop thinking about you instead. I moved closer, taking her hands in mine. We'll figure this out. Will we? Because it feels like the world is conspiring to keep us apart. That's when Luna appeared again, sitting in my armchair like she belonged there. This time she looked older, more serious. Tell her the truth, Julia. Tell her about the choice you're facing. What choice? Autumn asked, and I realized I'd been staring at the chair. Nothing, just thinking. But Luna wasn't finished. You can't protect her by lying to her, and you can't protect yourself by pretending this isn't real. Julia, you're scaring me a little. What's going on? I looked between Autumn and Luna, both of them waiting for me to speak. The moment felt suspended, fragile, like the wrong words could shatter everything. I've been having visitations, I said finally, from someone I used to know, someone who's been telling me to stop playing it safe. What kind of visitations? The kind where my childhood imaginary friend shows up to give me life advice. Autumn was quiet for a long moment. Then, instead of suggesting therapy or backing away slowly, she smiled. What does she say? That I'm being a coward, that I'm choosing what's comfortable over what's true. She sounds wise. She's 8 years old and wearing a sundress. The wisest people often are. Luna beamed from her chair. I like her, Julia. She gets it. As if hearing her, Autumn turned toward the chair where Luna sat. Is she here now? You can't see her? No. But I can feel something. Like there's more in this room than just us. Luna stood up, moving closer to Autumn. Tell her I said she's braver than she thinks, and that loving someone means fighting for them, even when it's hard. She says you're braver than you think, and that loving someone means fighting for them. Autumn's breath caught. Loving someone? The word hung between us, heavy with possibility and terror. I felt Luna's hand on my shoulder, warm and reassuring. Yeah, I said. Loving someone. I love you too, Autumn whispered. Luna smiled, and for a moment, I could have sworn Autumn smiled back at her. The storm hit Boise like the city had personally offended Mother Nature. I was working late at the warehouse when the first crack of thunder shook the building. Rain hammered against the windows, and I could hear the wind howling through the empty streets. My phone buzzed with a text from Autumn. Are you at the studio? The garden is getting destroyed. I grabbed my keys and drove through the deluge to meet her at the community garden. She was already there, standing in the rain next to our plot, her blonde hair plastered to her head, clothes soaked through. Our carefully tended Cherokee purples were getting battered by the wind. We have to save them, she shouted over the storm. They're just tomatoes. They're our tomatoes. We worked frantically, trying to stake the plants that had bent under the wind's assault. The rain was relentless, turning the garden paths into muddy streams. I was on my knees, struggling with a particularly stubborn stake, when Autumn slipped and fell against me. We went down in a tangle of limbs and mud, laughing despite the chaos. She was on top of me, rain streaming down her face, her blue eyes bright with something that wasn't just adrenaline. Julia, she said, her voice barely audible over the storm. Yeah? I can't pretend anymore. I can't pretend this isn't real, or that I don't want you, or that I care what Derek thinks. The rain continued to pour, but suddenly I couldn't feel the cold. All I could feel was her weight against me, her breath warm on my face. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. But I'm more scared of losing you. I reached up, cupping her face in my hands. You won't lose me. She kissed me then, and it was nothing like that first gentle kiss in the garden. This was desperate, urgent, full of all the things we'd been holding back. I could taste the rain on her lips, feel her heart pounding against mine. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she pressed her forehead against mine. Take me home with you. Autumn, please. I need to be with you, really with you. We abandoned the tomatoes to the storm. Back at my apartment, we stood dripping in the entryway, sudden awareness of what we'd just committed to making us shy. Autumn's wet clothes clung to her body, and I had to force myself to look away. I should get you some dry clothes, I said. In a minute. She moved closer, her hands finding the hem of my soaked shirt. Is this okay? I nodded, not trusting my voice. What followed was tender and desperate and perfect. We discovered each other slowly, reverently, like we were afraid the other might disappear if we moved too fast. Her skin was softer than I'd imagined, and when she whispered my name, it sounded like a prayer. We made love with the storm raging outside, rain against the windows providing a soundtrack to our whispered promises. Every touch was a revelation, every kiss a commitment. When she cried out my name, I felt something fundamental shift inside me, like a door I'd kept locked for years finally opening. Afterward, we lay tangled together, her head on my chest, our breathing slowly returning to normal. I traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, marveling at how perfectly she fit against me. No regrets? I asked. Only that we waited this long. That's when I saw Luna, sitting in the chair by the window. She was smiling, but there was something bittersweet in her expression. She can sense me now, Luna said, though Autumn couldn't hear her. The connection between you two has opened something. Autumn stirred against me, turning to look toward the chair. She's here, isn't she? How do you know? I can feel her. Like a warm presence. She's happy for us. Luna nodded. Tell her I said she's completing something in you that's been broken for a long time. She says you're completing something in me that's been broken. Autumn lifted her head to look at me. What was broken? The part that believed I deserved to be loved exactly as I am. You do deserve that. You deserve everything. Luna stood, moving to the window where she pressed her palm against the glass. The storm's clearing. But bigger storms are coming. You'll need each other to weather them. As if summoned by her words, my phone buzzed with a notification. Then another. And another. I reached for it reluctantly, Autumn still warm against my side. Shit, I breathed. What? Someone had taken photos of us at the garden. Us kissing in the rain, us laughing in the mud, us looking at each other like we were the only two people in the world. The photos were already spreading across social media with captions like Autumn Barnes's secret romance and wellness guru's new lifestyle choice. They're everywhere, I said, scrolling through the posts. Twitter, Instagram, gossip blogs. Autumn sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. Let me see. We huddled together, watching our private moment become public entertainment. The comments ranged from supportive to cruel, but the message was clear, our secret was out. Derek's going to lose his mind, Autumn said. Maya's going to have a heart attack. What do we do? I looked at Luna, who was still standing by the window. She turned to face us, and I could see through her now, like she was fading. You fight, she said simply. You love each other, and you fight for that love. We fight, I told Autumn. We love each other, and we fight for that. Even if it costs us everything? Even then. Luna smiled, and for a moment she looked solid again. You're going to be okay, Julia, both of you. You're stronger than you think. Is she leaving? Autumn asked, somehow sensing the change in the room. I watched Luna fade a little more. I think so. Her job here is done. Thank her for me. For helping you be brave. She says you're welcome. And that the hardest part is over. But as Luna disappeared completely, leaving only the scent of summer rain and the echo of her laughter, I wasn't sure if she was right. The hardest part might just be beginning. The media explosion was worse than I'd imagined. By morning, the photos were everywhere. Entertainment blogs, social media, gossip sites, all featuring images of Autumn and me kissing in the rain, laughing in the mud, looking at each other like we'd discovered something precious. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. Maya had called 14 times. Harrison Wells had left 3 increasingly terse voicemails. Even my coffee shop had reporters lurking outside. This is insane, I said, pacing my apartment while Autumn made coffee with shaking hands. Look at this headline, she said, showing me her phone. Former wellness guru finds new kind of healing with podcast maven. That's not even that bad. Check this one. Autumn Barnes scandal gets stranger. Secret same to sex romance exposed. I winced. Okay, that's worse. My doorbell rang, followed by aggressive knocking. Through the peephole, I saw a woman with a camera and a young man with a microphone. Miss Wright, can you comment on your relationship with Autumn Barnes? Back door? I suggested. Already tried. There's a photographer in the alley. We were trapped. 2 hours later, Maya arrived with a police escort to clear the reporters. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight, her usual composure replaced by barely controlled panic. Do you have any idea what you've done? She asked the moment she was inside. Good morning to you too, Maya. Don't joke about this. 3 major sponsors have pulled out. The network's getting death threats. Harrison Wells wants an emergency meeting. Autumn appeared from the kitchen, fully dressed but pale. Maya, right? I'm Autumn. I'm sorry about all this. Maya's expression softened slightly. I'm sure you are. But sorry doesn't pay salaries or keep the lights on. What's the damage? I asked. Financially, we're looking at a potential 60% revenue drop. Legally, we're fine. Professionally, you might have just committed career suicide. The words hit like physical blows. Everything I'd built, everything I'd fought for, crumbling because I'd fallen in love with the wrong person at the wrong time. There has to be something we can do, Autumn said. Like what? A press conference where you announce this was all a misunderstanding? That you're not actually gay? I'm not gay, Autumn said quietly. I'm in love with Julia. Despite everything, her words made my heart skip. But Maya just looked more frustrated. The distinction won't matter to advertisers. Family-friendly brands don't want to associate with controversy. That afternoon, while I dealt with the media circus, Autumn faced her own reckoning. Derek had summoned her to his office, where he sat behind his desk like a judge delivering a verdict. 48 hours, he said without preamble. That's how long it took you to destroy everything we've rebuilt. Derek, I can explain. Explain what? That you threw away 3 major brand deals for some media executive? That you chose to tank your comeback for a fling? It's not a fling. It doesn't matter what it is. Supergreen pulled their offer. The athleisure company is backing out. The meal planning app found someone else. Derek's voice was cold, clinical. You're toxic again, Autumn. Worse than before. So, what are you saying? I'm saying you have a choice. End this thing with Julia Wright. Publicly distance yourself from her, and maybe we can salvage something. Or continue down this path and destroy whatever's left of your career. And if I choose Julia? Then you'd better hope she's worth being unemployable. That evening, we met at the garden. It was the only place we could be alone, though even there we kept looking over our shoulders for photographers. Our Cherokee purples had survived the storm, but they looked battered, bruised. Kind of like us, Autumn said, touching a damaged leaf. Maya thinks I should put out a statement. Distance myself from the controversy. Derek wants me to deny everything. Say we're just friends. We sat on the bench someone had donated to the garden, watching the sun set over Boise. The other gardeners had given us space, though I caught them glancing our way with expressions ranging from supportive to concerned. What if they're right? I asked. What if we're destroying everything for something that might not last? Is that what you think? That this won't last? I looked at her, really looked at her. Even exhausted and stressed, she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. But more than that, she was brave enough to be honest about who she was, even when it cost her everything. No, I said. I think this is the realest thing I've ever felt. Then why are we considering giving up? Because I'm scared. Because I've worked so hard to build something, and I don't want to lose it. What if you lose me instead? The question hung between us like a challenge. I thought about Luna's words, about fighting for love even when it was hard. I thought about all the stories I'd told about people who chose authenticity over safety. I don't want to lose you, I said finally. Then don't. But even as we held each other on that bench, surrounded by the plants we'd grown together, I could feel the weight of the choice pressing down on us. Love or career, truth or security, each other or everything else we'd worked for. Maybe we need some time, Autumn said quietly, to figure out how to make this work without destroying everything. Time apart? Just until things calm down, until we can think clearly. I wanted to argue, to tell her that time apart wouldn't solve anything, but the rational part of my brain whispered that maybe she was right. Maybe we needed space to figure out how to love each other without burning down our lives. How long? I asked. I don't know. A few weeks? A month? And then? Then we decide if this is worth fighting for. We kissed goodbye in the fading light, both of us crying. As I walked away, I felt like I was leaving part of myself behind. But I also felt like maybe, just maybe, we were making space for something stronger to grow. I just hoped we'd both survive the separation long enough to find out. 3 weeks of silence felt like 3 years. I threw myself into work, but everything reminded me of autumn. The empty coffee cup on my desk, the Cherokee purple tomatoes I'd bought at the farmer's market that tasted like regret. The way sunlight through my office window made me think of her hair. Maya tried to be supportive, but I could see the relief in her eyes when I agreed to take meetings with traditional sponsors. Safe, boring companies who wanted safe, boring content. I went through the motions, nodding at their demographic targets and brand alignment requirements, but my heart wasn't in it. That's when inspiration struck. What if we do a podcast series about authenticity? I proposed to Maya during our Monday morning meeting. Real stories about people who chose truth over comfort. That sounds risky. Everything worth doing is risky. I spent the next 2 weeks developing the concept. Episodes about people who'd left secure jobs to pursue their dreams, who'd come out to unsupportive families, who'd chosen love over convenience. Stories about the courage it takes to be yourself in a world that rewards conformity. The first episode featured a rancher who'd transitioned in his 50s, losing half his cattle contracts but gaining his authentic self. The second was about a CEO who'd married his longtime partner despite board pressure to maintain a bachelor image. Each story was about the price of authenticity and the cost of living a lie. The response was overwhelming. Downloads soared. Comments poured in from listeners who felt seen, understood, less alone. Major media outlets began requesting interviews about the series. Meanwhile, Autumn was fighting her own battles. Derek had pushed her toward a new brand partnership with a conservative wellness company. But she'd surprised everyone by declining. Instead, she'd started documenting her journey on social media. sharing raw, unfiltered posts about self-acceptance and the courage to disappoint people. "I spent years selling you perfection," she wrote in one post that went viral. "But perfection is exhausting. It's also impossible. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not to make other people comfortable." Her follower count dropped initially, but then something beautiful happened. A new audience found her. People who were tired of manufactured inspiration, who wanted honesty over polish. Brands began reaching out. Smaller companies looking for authentic partnerships rather than performative endorsements. The night before her first live wellness event since the scandal, Autumn called me. We'd maintained radio silence during our separation, but hearing her voice felt like coming home. "I wanted you to know," she said, "that I'm going to talk about you tomorrow. About us. About what loving you taught me about loving myself." "Autumn, you don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. Because you were right. This is the realest thing I've ever felt, and I'm tired of hiding real things. What if it ruins everything? Then at least I'll have been honest. Besides, what's the point of success if I can't share it with the person who matters most?" The next evening, I watched her live stream from my apartment. She looked radiant, confident in a way I'd never seen before. When she got to the part about love, about choosing authenticity over approval, her eyes seemed to look directly into the camera at me. "I fell in love with someone who taught me that being vulnerable isn't a weakness," she said. "It's the only way to build something real, and I choose real over safe, every single time." The comments exploded with support. People sharing their own stories of choosing love over fear, authenticity over acceptance. It was beautiful and terrifying and exactly what I'd hoped for. After the stream ended, I didn't think twice. I drove to the venue where she was packing up, my heart pounding as I walked through the backstage area. She looked up when she saw me, and her smile could have lit up the whole city. "You came," she said. "I couldn't stay away. I'm glad." We stood there for a moment, drinking each other in. She looked the same but different, more solid somehow, more herself. "I missed you," I said. "I missed you too, every damn day. I love you. I love you too." This time, when we kissed, there was no hesitation. No fear about who might see or what it might cost. It was just us, choosing each other, choosing love over everything else. We made love that night in my apartment, and it was different from our first time. Less desperate, more certain. We moved together like we'd been doing this for years, like we'd finally found our way home to each other. Afterward, as we lay tangled together, Autumn traced patterns on my chest. "So what now?" "Now we figure out how to build something together. Something real. Even if it's messy? Especially if it's messy." The next morning brought news that changed everything. The Authenticity series had been picked up by a major streaming platform. They wanted to expand it, create a whole network of honest conversations about real people living authentic lives. "With one condition," Maya said, grinning as she delivered the news. "They want Autumn as your co-host." "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." Apparently, yesterday's live stream convinced them that you two together represent exactly what they're looking for. I looked at Autumn, who was making coffee in my kitchen, humming something under her breath. The morning light caught her hair, and I thought about how much courage it had taken for both of us to get here. "Think she'll say yes?" Maya asked. Only one way to find out. When I told Autumn about the offer, she didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely yes." "You don't want to think about it?" "I've spent 3 weeks thinking about it. About you, about us, about what I want my life to look like." She set down her coffee cup and took my hands. "I want to build something beautiful with you, something that matters." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." We sealed the deal with a kiss that tasted like possibility and felt like coming home. 1 year later, the Boise Community Garden looked like something out of a fairy tale. Our Cherokee purples had multiplied into an entire section, heavy with fruit that we shared with anyone who wanted them. Other gardeners had followed our lead, creating spaces for herbs, flowers, and vegetables that brought the whole neighborhood together. "I can't believe how much this place has grown," Autumn said, adjusting the microphone clip to her shirt. "We were recording a special anniversary episode right here in the garden, where everything had started." "Kind of like us," I replied, checking the audio levels on my portable recording setup. The podcast network had exploded beyond our wildest dreams. Authentic Conversations had become the flagship show, with Autumn and me interviewing people who'd chosen truth over comfort. We'd covered everyone from small-town mayors who'd come out late in life to corporate executives who'd left everything to pursue art. Maya still can't believe the numbers, I said, watching Autumn deadhead some cosmos that had volunteered near our tomatoes. Speaking of Maya, is she dating that sound engineer? Definitely. She just won't admit it. Some people take longer to embrace love, Autumn said with a knowing smile. The past year hadn't been easy. We'd faced criticism, lost some opportunities, gained others. Derek had eventually come around, especially after Autumn's new authentic brand partnerships had proven more lucrative than her old manufactured ones. Instead of selling perfection, she was selling honesty. Instead of promoting impossible standards, she was encouraging people to embrace their messy, complicated, beautiful lives. Recording in 3, 2, 1, I said, hitting the record button. Welcome to a very special episode of Authentic Conversations. I'm Julia Wright. And I'm Autumn Barnes. Today we're broadcasting from the place where we first met, the Boise Community Garden. We talked about our journey, about the courage it takes to choose love over fear, authenticity over approval. Listeners called in to share their own stories of transformation, of choosing vulnerability over safety. 1 year ago, neither of us could have imagined we'd be here, Autumn said toward the end of the episode, building something together, professionally and personally. The scariest decisions often lead to the most beautiful outcomes, I added. After we finished recording, we packed up our equipment and walked through the garden paths. The late afternoon sun cast everything in golden light, and I felt that familiar sense of peace that came from being exactly where I belonged. Julia, Autumn said, stopping near the bench where we'd had our first real conversation about the cost of authenticity. Yeah? She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. I know we've talked about this, she said, her voice slightly shaky, about building something permanent together, about choosing each other every single day. Autumn, let me finish. She took a deep breath, and I could see her hands trembling slightly. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who inspires you to complete yourself. Tears were already streaming down my face. You've made me braver, more honest, more myself than I ever thought possible. She dropped to one knee right there in the dirt between our thriving tomato plants. Julia Wright, will you marry me? The ring was perfect. Simple, elegant, with a stone that caught the light like her eyes when she laughed. Yes, I whispered. God, yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger with shaking hands, then stood and kissed me like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. Around us, the other gardeners began to cheer, having apparently been in on the secret. How long have you been planning this? I asked when we finally broke apart. Since about 10 minutes after we met. I just had to work up the courage. I love you so damn much. I love you too. Forever and always and through whatever comes next. As the sun set over Boise, we held each other in the garden we'd grown together, surrounded by the fruits of our labor and the friends who'd watched us bloom. Luna was there too, I realized, not visible but present in the warm breeze that rustled the leaves, in the golden light that made everything glow, in the sense of peace that filled my chest. She'd told me once that loving someone meant fighting for them, but she'd never mentioned that sometimes, when you win that fight, when you choose love over fear and authenticity over safety, the reward is a lifetime of growing beautiful things together. Our Cherokee purples were heavy on the vine, ready for harvest, just like us. The wedding was small, held right here in the garden, on a crisp October morning. Maya officiated, Derek walked Autumn down the makeshift aisle between the raised beds, and Susan from the garden center provided flowers from her greenhouse. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to choose each other through every season, to tend our love like the most precious crop. I promise to love you even when you're wrong about plant spacing, Autumn said, making everyone laugh. I promise to love you even when you harvest tomatoes before they're ripe, I replied. When Maya pronounced us married, the whole garden erupted in celebration. As we kissed for the first time as wives, I felt Luna's presence one last time. A warm touch on my shoulder, a whisper of summer rain, and then she was gone for good, her job finally complete. Later, as we danced to music playing from someone's Bluetooth speaker, surrounded by friends and family and the plants we'd grown from seeds, Autumn whispered in my ear. No regrets? I looked around at our chosen family, at the life we'd built from nothing but hope and honesty and the courage to plant seeds without knowing if they'd grow. Only that we waited so long to begin. Well then, she said, spinning me around between the tomato plants, we'd better make up for lost time. And we did. Every day for the rest of our beautifully messy, authentically imperfect, absolutely perfect life together.